after 11 o'clock. Nice looking Friday. Susan Martin is in the studio. She's the benefits specialist at Senior Care Solutions Online and the spokesperson for the 2012 Alzheimer's Foundation of America National Memory Screening Day. And we are expecting in the studio soon Brandy Gregg, who is a dementia specialist, and she'll be here to answer questions along that line. The Alzheimer's Foundation of America is having the National Memory Screening Day on Tuesday, a week after you vote, so hopefully you'll remember who you voted for. It's not a good joke, is it? That's November 13th. The memory screening website is the nationalmemoryscreening.org. Susan Martin. Good morning, Susan. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning.
How is everything?
Everything's great.
Do you know anybody that went through or is going through Alzheimer's?
Yes, actually I do. Actually, my stepfather had Parkinson's with the dementia.
Had both?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, they very often are.
They
do have both. Yes, very often. And we deal with people every day that have that.
This must be Brandy. There she comes.
Good morning.
How you doing, Brandy? Nice to see you. Thank you for coming in.
Sorry.
We just got started, and we don't want you to get in an accident rushing here. We were punting, as Susan was saying. So when we are talking about people who have Alzheimer's, and the reason I asked you is because I think everybody will say, "Oh yeah, I know somebody," and that is kind of the thing. Has that always been the case, or has dementia in general and Alzheimer's specifically become more diagnosed, or is it just more prevalent? What is the story there? Do either
Brandy,
of you know?
why don't you take that one?
Okay, that's a great question. There's a couple of things that are going on. I think one is we do have more people who are more educated, including our physicians and clinicians. So I think people are being screened, and more screening means more people get diagnosed, and diagnosed hopefully correctly. The other thing that's happening is people are living longer, and age is the greatest risk factor of developing dementia and primarily Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that we have this baby boom effect. So when we start,
So just a lot of people getting old at one time.
Yes, exactly.
What does the screening actually reveal, and is the screening reliable? And I'm sure it is to a certain extent, but for example, I could forget something and suddenly I think I have some kind of dementia, right?
Well, when we talk about screening, now let me just clarify. The screening that we're going to be doing on November 13th for National Memory Screening Day is really a basic screening. It's just to help communicate and educate to families and to people who are concerned about what their options are. But to your point about, when is it Alzheimer's? When is it just kind of normal memory loss? And that's something that has to really be determined by a series of tests and somebody who's qualified, a clinician who's qualified to kind of rule out what I refer to as all the other low-hanging fruit before we come up with some diagnosis a little more sinister like Alzheimer's disease, because there are about 170 types of dementia. So while someone may have the cognitive changes that are systematic or look like an Alzheimer's diagnosis, there may be 169 other reasons why they're having confusion and cognitive changes.
And you know what I was surprised by when I first heard it? It's been years, but I heard the fact that Alzheimer's is a fatal disease. And while it's not like a heart condition where it could be overnight, it's although, am I wrong about that? It was amazing to me to hear that, thinking it was just simply a memory loss disease, but it really does eventually kill you, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Alzheimer's disease is much more than just a memory disorder. Unfortunately, Alzheimer's disease is always fatal.
But it's physical.
Yes, because what happens is when you have that atrophy or the shrinkage of the brain, our brain controls everything from how we breathe, our heartbeat, how we swallow. All of the things that happen in our body is controlled by the brain. So when that damage begins, those things start to become affected. So what you'll see is people start to have issues with speech, and with speech, oftentimes we'll start to see issues with swallowing, and we see weight loss and that failure to thrive, and depression, and eventually, and this disease lasts anywhere from 8 to 20 years. Eventually,
isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
8 to 20 years.
Yeah.
I have a friend who died. A childhood friend died maybe a month or so ago. I hadn't kept in touch with him, but I had a friend, a mutual friend, wrote me on Facebook, and I'm pointing to this computer because it was while I was sitting here. I had a little message. He was only 53, maybe 50, and they say he was gone. Is their words? They say he's been gone for 4 years. So it's amazing that it can happen at that young of an age. I mean, I guess it's all relative, but 53 seems pretty young to me.
Well, that is very young, and we have approximately 5.4 million Americans that are affected by this disease, and about 250,000 of those folks are what we call early onset. So those are going to be the folks that are in their, I would even say, late 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Right.
So it is not just a disease of the elderly.
So when a person comes to the screening, should the person who will potentially be the caretaker be there also?
Well, it's a great opportunity for us to spend a few minutes to help educate that caregiver and get them connected with resources.
Is that perhaps the biggest thing we can do, is just to be there for somebody with Alzheimer's and hope that somebody's there for us if we get it?
I think that's certainly a large part of what we should be doing as a society, but I think it's bigger than that. I think we need to try to focus on allocating more funds to help with research and finding a cure.
No, hopefully, yeah.
I think that, and Susan could speak more to this, people really need to plan for this disease in terms of the earlier we get a diagnosis, the better we can work with the family, the caregiver, as you mentioned, the caregiver and the person with the diagnosis with treatment options,
right.
But also what to expect. But a very important part of what we do at our company is what Susan does in her role, and that's really the benefits planning and helping families to understand what's available and how to plan for the disease. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about that, Susan, but I know you spend a lot of time working with families and helping to educate them about options in terms of legal and financial.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and everybody's case is a little bit different. And it's just so important that, especially once a diagnosis has been reached, that they start planning right away. Because, first of all, it gives that person with the diagnosis the ability to be a part of that, which is really important.
Right,
they want to be a part of making those decisions that are going to involve their care as their disease progresses. And there's also options out there. Some people need placement. Some people can be cared for at home. And it's a matter of affordability. What can we afford? How much does a family want to be involved, and how much are they able to be involved in the care? So all of that, the sooner that's spelled out and kind of planned out, the easier it's going to be for the family and the person to be able to cope as this disease progresses.
Does the National Alzheimer's Foundation make checks of all the assisted living facilities here in town that have memory support units to make sure that the patients with Alzheimer's are getting the most appropriate care there in the memory support units?
No, I think part of what we do at Senior Care Solutions is to try to work with families to help them understand and clarify questions just like that. It's very important, and I think this is a legislative issue here in the state of Florida, that people understand that in the state of Florida, administrators of assisted living communities are not the licensed holder of that facility. The facility holds the license. We see oftentimes in our practice where administrators can be a bad administrator, lose their position and go to another facility and be hired, and there's no real accountability from a legislative standpoint. In other states, it's the administrator who's actually holding a license, and that license can be sanctioned and even withdrawn if they have bad behavior. So your point to, does somebody regulate that? That's really up to the state of Florida through the WOCA. And then the Ombudsman.
What is WOCA?
WOCA is the agency in the state of Florida that regulates healthcare facilities.
Okay.
And there is a website. It's the WOCA website. It's the florida.gov website that people can go to, and you can actually pull up the reports, the survey reports of facilities. Now, in our practice, that's one thing that we do for families when we're helping them to make educated decisions about which facilities are a good fit. We look at the WOCA ratings. We look at, we have the ability to talk with local ombudsmen to see, you can ask how many visits have been to a community, how many complaints, how many are founded, how many are unfounded.
Oh, wow.
But consumers don't know how to reach out to those resources, and that's one of the things that we try to do in our practice, is to help educate people about what's available, because there are a lot of wonderful communities in Marion County that provide good care, but you really need to investigate who's providing the care, what are their standards in terms of education and training. And one of the things that I'm a real advocate for is understand if you're going to an assisted living community, and a lot of them will say, well, we do the memory care training, all of our staff are trained. They're required to do that. So they're not really telling you what they're doing to exceed the expectations of WOCA licensing. They're telling you what the minimum standard is, but they will present it like, well, hey, we educate all of our caregivers. Well, you're supposed to.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So let's take it from there. And in the benefits part of this, would we, as caregivers, let's say, would we be able to say, okay, now that I know that, can you recommend somebody who goes above and beyond what the minimum is?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely,
and you
definitely,
do that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's also important there's a lot of criteria that goes into picking a facility for someone to be placed in. Their level of care that's needed, whether they're going to need to rely on some state funds or some outside resources to be able to pay for that. Some facilities will work with those funds, some won't. The family, where they're located. There's just a lot of criteria that comes into play, and the same facility is not going to be appropriate for everybody, depending on what their needs are.
Oh, interesting.
So for somebody to say, well, I want to pick this one because it's close to my house, well, okay, but it may or may not be the proper one or the best one for that patient to be in so that they can get what they need. It's all depends on all those little pieces that we put together.
Yeah. It is an interesting topic, and I'm going through it right now with my own mom. She's went from one facility to another because the new one she's in is more appropriate for her. Mm-hmm. Nothing was wrong with the first one, by the way. It just was more and that had to be pointed out to me because I was the stubborn one. I was the one saying, no, this is a good place. I like it here. They're the ones who educated me the differences in the two places.
Well, and that's very normal. It's very common. Family goes, well, but she's perfectly fine here, and they have great food, and they're taking really good care of her. Yeah. But is she getting the XYZ that she really needs to be able to have a higher standard, functionality?
And if I put myself in the position of all the people you actually work with, I'm one, you work with hundreds.
Yes.
I'm sure that's the hard nut to crack, and I'm putting myself in the nut category.
Well, and that's a very good point, because a lot of times as the adult child, the person that's what we would refer to as the influencer, the decision maker, a lot of times when people are touring communities, the families are looking through their eyes as to what's appealing to them, what looks good to them.
Yeah.
And for somebody with dementia, they may need a smaller environment, a more intimate environment. They may need a community that is, not the same types of criteria that you have. And we provide, through our benefits and our assessment and the care management, we help to kind of, when we go to do the home visit, we're looking at the home to see what's in this home that would tell me or indicate to me what might be of interest to somebody or a fit to somebody with Alzheimer's disease. So we look at it through the eyes of the Alzheimer's client, not the family member necessarily.
Which we couldn't do. I mean, there's no way working at a radio station that I would know what you know working what you do. I mean, so obviously we would rely on you in the same way I would rely on a mechanic for my car, a doctor for my...
in the same way we would rely on you to do the radio show. We couldn't pop in and do what you do.
Why?
So everybody has their own...
I feel needed.
There you go. You're needed today.
Niche,
that's true. That's really true.
And just to, since we have a lot of consumers, you have to be really careful, because understand, sales and marketing people, it's like a car salesman. They are selling you a product. Their job is to sell you their community. We come at it from a very objective perspective and look at really what the needs are and what can this person afford, what makes the most sense. And honestly, sometimes that means, especially in this community, saying to the family, and I just had this conversation with a family this morning, one of our clients, I said to the family, don't you think it might make more sense to move your mom closer to you? Because you are a long-distance caregiver, and let's face it, at 93, mom's not getting any younger. So we can help those long-distance caregivers, the family members, the adult children who are out of state, transition into a situation where they're going to be able to be more involved in mom's care. So we look at all of that.
And that's what I can understand, because there are so many sons and daughters out there that leave their mom in a facility in one state, and they're living in a totally, separate state. I just don't understand how they can lovingly do that.
Well, there's lots of issues there. It could be. It could be a financial issue if they've been, as an example. Let's just pull one out of the hat and say Florida, mom and dad are in Florida. The laws here, if they need to rely on, let's say, state funds, some Medicaid funds or some diversion funds, the laws here are one thing. If you go to New York or New Jersey or Chicago, Illinois, the laws there are different. So for them just to say, well, we'll bring mom up here and she'll be able to access funds up, that may not happen because the criteria is different.
What a shame.
Yeah,
what a shame that families choose to be separated.
And understand, too, that families that are doing that are not being unkind and they're not being cruel, and it's not that they don't love mom and dad or whoever the patient is, but it sometimes is easier or a little more palatable for them in their life, in the way for them to go through this and have someone like us be their eyes and ears here with mom and dad, and them still be in charge, but for somebody else to kind of do the hands-on care. As you well know, Larry, it is really, really difficult to watch a family member, a loved one, go through this disease. Well, and that's hard.
And what you offer actually is so, I can appreciate what you do. I was fortunate. I actually, because of the radio show, knew a lady at a facility, and she actually recommended a different facility than her own. So while she had a vested interest, she was more concerned with my concerns, and what you provide, that's what you do.
Right,
You do that all the time without any vested interest. So that makes sense. Let's focus a little bit on the event happening on the 13th. And this is a screening. And I just kind of want to go back a few pages in our discussion here. We were talking about diagnosis. Is a screening a diagnosis?
No, it's simply a first step, and really the intention of this event is to bring more awareness to the disease and to help families recognize what resources are available, and just a preliminary, you asked earlier, how do you know if it's Alzheimer's disease or just normal aging? Yeah. And, my simple and kind of silly answer to that is, when I'm talking to families and talking to students in education, I always say we've all had a here and after experience. And that means you've walked into a room and wondered, what did I come in here after? If you can backtrack...
Always happens in the laundry room. What the heck am I doing in here?
But if you can backtrack and kind of think through, now, why did I come in here? Oh, this is why I came in. Then that's pretty normal. Where we start to worry is when people walk into a room and they're not really recognizing anything, nothing looks familiar, they're not able to backstep and figure out why they walked into the room. We look at a myriad of things in a diagnosis process. Both non-invasive and more invasive testing can be recommended, and that's why it's so important that people talk to their physician, family members talk to their physician, and share with them, be honest with them about what signs and symptoms they are experiencing. Our memory screening day is simply an event to bring awareness to the resources and to help people understand when is it necessary to really go and see their physician.
And so this event, a person, you were telling us off the air, just cannot show up to the event because of the time that the screening takes. So what do they have to know
that's
in
not
advance?
Necessarily true. I mean, that we would prefer that they give us a call and make an appointment.
Okay.
So we don't want people to have to be sitting and waiting and wasting, wasting a lot of time. We like to have them be able to come in and out and go on with their day without getting hung up. If they want to just drop in, it's okay. It's not. They may have to wait a little bit, but as long as they don't mind that, it's okay.
So how do we do it? What do you recommend? Do we call and say we're coming and you give us a time?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, they can do that. They can call us, Senior Care Solutions.
Okay.
And our phone number is 352-219 4070.
4070.
Yeah.
And the event is on the 13th. It's 2 weeks. No, what is it?
A week from Tuesday.
A week from Tuesday.
Tuesday.
That's right. I don't know what I was thinking. I had a memory lapse right there. So we called.
Maybe you should come by, Larry.
I don't want to know. I don't want to. I bet you have that a lot too, right? I don't want to know. If I'm going to lose my mind, I want to do it on my own. All right. And so 219-4070, and then what happens? You give us a time slot, and where do we show up?
It's at the Windsor of Ocala.
At the Windsor, okay.
Yeah.
At the
Okay,
Windsor,
and
okay.
where is that?
The address for the Windsor is 2650
2650.
Southeast 18th Avenue.
Okay.
Okay.
And if they want to Google, I'll give the zip code out because that helps some people. It's 34471.
Oh, okay.
If they want to
Excellent.
MapQuest or Google it.
Is that near? That must be near.
You know where Chambrel is?
Yes.
Okay, it's right up the street from Chambrel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This towards 17th Street from
Okay.
Chambrel.
Over by the
okay.
Deerwood area.
Now, when people come in for their screenings, how long will that screening take? And then will there be people there on site that can be asked questions by the caregiver as to how much a certain facility might cost to have their parents there, or will Medicare or Medicaid pay for some of this, and what kind of insurance should they need? Will those kind of questions be answered?
Yes. Let me address the screening. The screening should take about 10 minutes.
Oh.
Again, this is just a preliminary. It's not a clinical diagnosis. It doesn't represent that. This is just a complimentary screening and then a resource visit. In terms of the benefits questions, Susan, are you going to be there most of the day? I think
Yes.
that's the plan.
Yeah.
Susan and I will be there with a couple of our other team members to answer questions for families. So if they have clinical questions, we can get them directed to the right resource. There's some great neurologists that we work with. We can refer them out to. If they have
Oh,
questions
wow.
about communities, we can help direct them to a short list of communities to check out. We also, for our clients, we do provide a comprehensive checklist of what they should be looking for and questions they should be asking when they tour communities.
Oh, nice.
With that, and that is really useful. And going through it this past couple months, it is. I can appreciate it so much. There's an agency, is it the Elder Affairs or something like that? And they were sort of helpful, but not as familiar with this community. And I think that was my issue with them. I called them up, and they were kind of, I don't want to say generic information, but general information is what they were given, which was good. But I mean, it wasn't useful for me, to be honest.
They do. They're more of a. They're wonderful people, and they really have a lot of information.
Yeah.
But they don't get down in the trenches in the same way.
Exactly it. In other words, the information they gave me, they were reading off of something.
Sure.
And I don't know. I mean, who provides that? You know, where it sounds like you go right in there, and you know the people.
Yeah, I was
sounds
going to say,
like.
keep in mind, Larry, we have clients in all the communities, or most of the communities in Marion County. So we're in those communities, and we see firsthand the quality of care. We see firsthand if there are concerns, and we can, I mean, we're, like you say, we're in the trenches of that day in, day out. That's what we do.
And that's what's wonderful about you ladies, is that you're extremely objective and you're looking for the best possible place for the family to place their loved ones that will suit their individual needs.
Right. But that's what our whole mission in our business is to really serve the client. We're very focused on what's in the best interest of the client.
And you know what I was wondering, and maybe this is applicable, I'm not really sure, but you know, in this day and age, if you go to Amazon, for example, and you want to know, well, how did other people like this book? Okay, they get 5 stars, 4 stars, and you got all kinds of, and some of them just seem to be mean or they're off base. I was buying some straps for an accordion, okay, and somebody gave it 1 star, and I said, wow, why they give it 1? How could a strap be bad, you know? And because it didn't come with the little plastic piece. I said, well, that wasn't fair. I mean, just write them and say you.
Yeah.
And what that has to do with what you do. Is there such a thing, and should we rely on it, or is it as undependable as those Amazon?
Well, I would say that it's probably, you know, it's as accurate as the person giving the opinion on the website.
And you don't know who they are.
You don't know who they are, and I
Yeah.
can tell you that being an online shopper myself, if you have a bad experience with the customer service, sometimes you may give the product a poor rating when in fact it
That's
was one
true.
customer service agent who wasn't nice. So, you know, obviously our recommendation would be to work with a geriatric care manager, and there are other care managers in Marion County.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something without naming names. In helping my mom find a place, I was working with an agency. There must have been 30 or more people that I actually spoke to at this agency. Every one of them beautiful, loving, caring, understanding, patient, except for one.
Yeah.
One.
There was that one devil. You know that devil that wears Prada with that lady?
Yeah, that's right.
There was
that's
one
right.
of them. And I said to Robin, thank goodness she wasn't the first one I met.
Yeah.
But everybody else was so sweet and helpful that the agency itself gets really high marks. But can you imagine if she was the first one?
Yes.
So.
Well, all of the folks that work with me and my company know I'm extremely hands-on. I'm talking to all of my staff on almost a daily basis, sometimes more than once a day. All of our clients have my direct cell number. If there is ever a concern, and those are I'm proud to say very few and far between. We are really dedicated to making sure our customers are served well and that they don't have a bad experience. This is stressful enough. The disease process, the diagnosis, the caregiving responsibilities, the financial, the legal. This is stressful enough.
Yeah.
The last thing we want to do as a service provider is add to that stress.
And to be able to speak one-on-one with either of you ladies and have you ladies there from beginning to end is really the most wonderful thing ever for both the caregiver and the person that needs the care.
Well, thank you. You guys have been so kind to us here. We just really enjoy this partnership with you guys.
Oh, that's
really
nice to say. Yeah.
And you asked such good questions. We didn't even go over the questions that...
Oh, I have them in my hand. I know.
I know, but you asked better ones.
You asked better ones than the ones I came up with.
But you know what it is? You know what it is? I like to put myself in their shoes, and in this case, I am in their shoes.
That's right.
Or I was, and just look, we advertise. Okay, we are in the business of advertising. So if an assisted living facility wants to advertise, of course, it's going to sound good, and it probably is good. Or they're going to send a brochure, and it's going to be printed nice, and it's in full color, and everybody's really looking happy in the thing. But the thing is this. That it might, good shoes on Rob. You know, we were looking at Halloween costumes. Here's a good example. This is the guy talking, okay? We went to this page with ladies in Halloween costumes because, I'm a guy. All right, so you look at the girl in the cat costume, you look at the girl in the scarecrow costume, you look at the girl in the Muppet costume, and you say, well, I like that cat costume. That's my favorite one, right? And you say, well, no, it's not the costume, it's the girl. And we looked at it and said, no, it's not. It's the same girl in each one of these pictures. It's a different costume. And what does that have to do with what we're talking about here is that, it has to fit you.
Right.
Yes.
It has to be, when you were talking about an assisted living facility or long-term care, any of that stuff, you said it early on in this conversation, is that it really is. I mean, what's good for Robin when she gets there is not going to be the same as me, although I hope it is, because I'd like to sit next to her in the rocking chair and say, we used to talk to people, remember? We used to interview people.
Yeah, remember those days? It's a fake microphone.
Well, and it's exactly the same thing we do have a homemaker companion portion of our business. And it's the same thing if we have a client that gets a homemaker companion that maybe, and they're all wonderful people, and we're very careful, but there may be a personality thing. And if they are unhappy and they don't mesh, it's okay. Let us know. We'll bring someone else in.
Exactly.
Because you just can't always fit every little round peg into every little square hole.
Sometimes the odd couple relationship works out the best,
yes,
too, right?
That's true.
You just never know, right?
That's true.
Know.
You don't know.
All right. Well, you ladies are awesome. Thank you
Thank you.
Thank you
for what you give our community. Thank you for coming in and sharing it with us. For the listeners, the Alzheimer's Foundation of America National Memory Screening Day is Tuesday, November 13th. Here in Ocala, it'll be at the Windsor. What's the full name?
The Windsor of Ocala.
Of Ocala. And the phone number to call to set up your time is 219-4070. And the Windsor is over there near Deerwood, right?
Between Deerwood and Chambrel on 18th.
2650 Southeast 18th Avenue. Susan Martin and Brandy Gregg, thank you, ladies.
Thank you
very much
for all you do. We will take a little break and be right back. We'll have fun with Joe in about 12 minutes. We'll be right back.
Habitat for Humanity is partnering up with the Bridge Assisted Living Facility for the third annual Wreaths of Hope. On November 29th at 7 p.m., wreaths of all shapes and sizes will be auctioned off to benefit Habitat for Humanity's Project Patriot program. This program ensures that no veteran in Marion County will reside in substandard housing or suffer from quality of life issues related to housing. Now here's how you can help. You can donate a wreath, either bought or created, and of course bid on your favorite wreath on November 29th at the Bridge Assisted Living Facility, just off 27th Avenue, adjacent to Trinity High School.